Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Pause the video right now to check out my social media, my radio show, and thatdrummerguy.com. And most of all, enjoy the following presentation.
Hi Josh, this is Alexander from Letters from the Colony.
Hi, how's it going?
Yeah, it's alright. It's Monday, I'm tired as fuck, but, there's money in the bank, food in the fridge, and, album coming out on Nuclear Blast. I can't really complain, can I?
Yeah, that is a great way to look at it. And what an album it is, too. I mean, I've gotten the chance to be able to check this out over the past week, and I absolutely love what you guys are doing with Letters from the Colony. I mean, I love this kind of formula that you guys have and all the great diversity and different soundscapes that are going on throughout the album. This is just a magnificent debut album.
Well, thank you very much. It's very flattering.
So how did this whole band come together?
Yeah, well, it's a long story, really, but I guess I'm just amazed that, this whole thing didn't happen sooner, because we've been friends forever. I mean, me and the guys, I joined the band in late 2014. But I've always been I felt like a part of Letters from the Colony ever since the beginning. It was way back in 2009. They had a band they called Sever the Pale, and we did a song together for fun. And it was some good times, but, they got more serious, changed their name, and found some new members and just went at it. I helped them with, the first EP. I did the mixing and mastering on that one. And, since we were all kids, there weren't any, recording budgets or anything like that. So a lot of the sound had to happen inside the computer. We used program drums. You'd probably hate that since you're that drummer guy. But, yeah. Program drums, I sort of helped to iron out a few fills here and there and reamp the guitars, and I felt like, the sound director of Letters from the Colony. So, throughout the years, whenever someone said anything nice about Letters from the Colony, I sort of took a little bit of credit, almost, even though I wasn't a member in the band. And I actually made some sort of half-assed attempt at an audition in, I think it was 2013. When the first singer left the band, because I sort of wanted to help them out, and I am a vocalist, so why not try? But it was more out of necessity. I didn't really have the proper motivation or whatever, and I guess they saw that, so they went on to find an Irish guy who turned out to be a disaster of sorts. He was a great vocalist and a great guy, but he had some family issues and pretty much just left the band a couple of days before a few shows that they'd booked in our great capital, Stockholm. So they just called me up and basically asked if I wanted to be a stand-in vocalist for a show. And I just gotten back from tour, and I asked them, oh shit, when's the show? And they're like, oh, it's tomorrow. So I just said, well, fuck it, I do it. And that's how that's my role, my story, joining Letters from the Colony.
That's really cool. I mean, just the fact that you've been there since pretty much the beginning, helping out in different ways, and now being able to help front the band now after being able to help them out for so long. Yeah, well, it's a lot easier now because I actually get a say in some stuff that I, was sort of out of my territory before. So, I can tell Sebastian, don't do that thing or whatever. That sounds ridiculous. Write riffs for humans. So with that, once you became a full-fledged member of the band, how much did things change as far as the vocal approach and what you started adding into the band?
Yeah, well, it's actually sort of a new thing for me because I'm a studio guy pretty much. Always have been. Always loved the studio because you can do all these cool arrangements and make stuff sound way bigger than they actually are. And that was, the way I was working with a lot of bands too, because, songwriting can be more or less evolved and sophisticated, whatever you want to call it. With this band, there's so much stuff going on, on the guitars and the drums, and so many details everywhere. So like the first thing I felt like I had to do was take a step back and sort of like minimize my sort of impact in a way, lack of a better word, sort of try to minimize everything, so there aren't like quad tracked vocals and huge screams, and I'm not screaming over every riff because I feel like, oh, this riff needs to be in front, this needs to be heard, I can't just put in some lyrics here just for the sake of singing something. So that is pretty much why there are so many instrumental parts on this album, and I think that's sort of like unique in a way because people like to follow the more known recipes and think in terms of like verses and choruses and bridges and whatever, but it's like I'm trying to do whatever sort of flows with the song without stepping on Sebastian's toes. So yeah.
and with that, I think you're doing an amazing job with that. I mean, with knowing where to sing and where not to sing, having the instrumental segments on there, like that makes everything else stand out, because once everyone is coming through with the rest of it, I mean, it really does shine through. Like This Creature Will Haunt Us Forever. I mean, that's such a great segue with that the lone guitar string stuff that's going on there, and then when it kicks back in, I mean, it just makes everything stand out so much more.
Yeah, exactly. We worked a lot with dynamics and tried to keep things very, minimal in places and very maximal in other places. I know we work a lot with like layers of guitars because Sebastian has one of those, the huge like Boss loop pedals. Can record like 3 layers of yourself or something, and that is something he's used forever in, both writing and performing. So I guess that sort of, influences the structures of our songs as well. There's a lot of build-up. If you listen to songs like the intro of Terminus or Galax or whatever, it's like these very long parts because he's actually building all the sort of melodies as he's going.
And with that, I mean, now with the album coming out February 16th through Nuclear Blast, and you've gotten a chance to be able to listen to the album, and of course with it being mixed and mastered and everything else, how do you feel about your approach when it comes to the album, having to change the way that you've done it?
Yeah, well, it's always fun to try something new in the studio as well, and like, just think in terms of great songs rather than great productions, I guess the only thing that I don't like yet, maybe I'll grow to love it, but those awkward moments on stage when I'm not singing for 6 minutes or whatever. I mean, I used to be a guitar player too, so I literally have nothing to do now. So I'm trying to, sort of get used to that.
So,
but it's fun for sure too.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that'll come in time too. I mean, there might be something that you'll be able to figure out either doing something or going off stage, like I've seen some bands doing instrumental sections come up, or whatever the case is. I'm sure something will come up that will make those parts definitely come out for you live. Yeah, I'm sort of hoping that too. I tried to incorporate it, I don't know if you've heard it on the album, but we have a few parts on there with tambourine. Oh yeah. And I tried to, very subtly suggest to Sebastian that maybe I should play a tambourine live. And he called me a faggot. So yeah, maybe that's not going to happen. But, I try to, go off stage sometimes. And if there's a bar around, maybe, Songs like Vignette, definitely got time for, half a beer at least. Well, it's funny because you mentioned the tambourine part, and I was thinking maybe that could have been like a Dream Theater kind of thing, because that's what James LaPree does for some songs where he incorporates the tambourine. But going off stage in a drinking during instrumental segments, I mean, that could always work out as well. Yeah, I mean, it's we sort of discussed different approaches. I mean, there was a time when I also wanted to play guitar in this band.
but we sort of decided that, we need a proper front man that can get the audience going in like the intense parts and sort of usher them on, like, do circle pits, come on, whatever. But that's like really hard when I'm not singing and it's a really like quiet part. The only thing you want the audience to do then is listen. So, there's not much for me to do.
Well, like I said, I mean, that will hopefully come in time as well. I mean, once more ideas start coming through and the more live shows that start happening to be able to promote this album, there might be new ideas that come out from it.
Yeah, I think it has to like flow naturally as well, and I think I will, develop it more as we go along. Like, I've only been in the band for a few years, and we haven't played that many live shows because, after me joining, we pretty much started working on Vignette right away. So there's been a lot of studio stuff, not so much live stuff.
And speaking of that, of course, once again, the album Vignette is coming out February 16th through Nuclear Blast. Have you gotten to hear any reviews or any words on the album yet so far?
Yeah, we actually read a couple of reviews that were forgiving, to say the least, but they were actually pretty nice. I think we got like 8 out of 10 in one magazine.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that's more than I hoped for, But it's cool to see what other people say about us. Like, for instance, I know everybody in the band, like, we hate the idea of like being associated with another band, but as soon as people write reviews, that's the only thing you got to like compare us to. So people are mentioning bands like Gojira and Meshuggah and all those guys, and we're like, oh no, shit, we don't want to be like copycats or whatever, even though they've been a huge influence for us. We don't want to be known as like mini Meshuggah or Gojira Junior. We want to have our own thing.
Yeah, and that sadly is the case, especially when it comes to a debut album. I mean, when you're trying to describe something for someone who hasn't had the chance to hear it yet, I mean, you got to be able to draw some kind of influence into the sound to get people interested. But then once like the second, third, fourth album comes around, then you're able to just come out as your own rather than having to be compared to other people. Yeah,
exactly. So that will probably like fade away over time.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, but I think I'm starting to love it more though. Like it's more of an honor now to be mentioned next to bands like that you've loved for years. It's a cool thing.
Oh, definitely, especially when it's in the positive landscape of that as well, because it's just like bands like Gojira and Meshuggah, it's just like they were able to make their own patented sounds for what they're doing, and I imagine that's what's going to be happening with Letters from the Colony. I mean, it definitely sounds like you guys are forging your own sound, and with every subsequent album that's to come out, I just imagine that expanding even more.
Yeah, and that's something that's this whole thing with Nuclear Blast and getting a proper record deal. Like, we actually have a budget now for, exploring stuff and maybe trying out, different studios and finding some better equipment and guitar pedals and make the kind of videos that we want. It's sort of like a huge help in us realizing our sort of musical vision that we've had for years now. So yeah, it's like there's no cutting corners now.
So also with that, I mean, with releasing your debut album, it's so important to be able to pick the right songs to be able to represent the album before it comes out. How hard was it to be able to decide what songs were going to be singles off this album?
Yeah, I think it was pretty obvious to us from the start, like even before we started recording, like just listening to the demos. And I guess we wanted to show like some yeah, we had one song that's a little bit more experimental, and then we have one song that's a little bit more punchy and, you know, in your face. And then we have our last single that will be released on the 9th, I believe, February, which is, you know, a song that sort of encompasses the band in a way. It's a little bit of everything that, you know, makes up our sound. A little bit of jazz and clean guitars and lots of blast beats and screams and, you know, the full Monty.
I do believe I know the song that you're talking about, and I'm very excited to see that that's going to be released as a single as well.
Yeah, and the video is pretty crazy as well. Like, we got a guy up in the northernmost parts of Sweden. He basically lives in like a little cottage, and he has like 5 Siberian Huskies that he just plays with every day. Like, they drag him on a snowboard up a mountain, and he brags about it on Instagram constantly. Like, it's a pretty cool environment, and he's got like a drone. He's shot some pretty amazing like nature footage, and it's pretty intense. So we're excited to be releasing the video as well.
Oh, that's making me excited to be able to check that out, because that, I mean, that just sounds like it'd be such a great visual to go along with the song, if it's the one I'm thinking of. I mean, just like matching those two combined, I think it's a great way to go about it.
Yeah, and it's pretty much, I guess it's sort of something that happened without, you know, any sort of master plan or anything, but there's a lot of nature stuff, and we didn't start in like early 2015 and said, you know, we're going to make an album about nature stuff. The videos, they need to have nature stuff. It was just, you know, I guess it's something we're passionate about or drawn to, you know, because of like where we're from in the world or something like that. And it's like looking at the videos, it sort of feels like us in a way, even with erasing contrast, like the really epic drone shots they did up it's actually I think it's the highest waterfall in Europe.
Oh, wow.
It's not very far from where we live. And, you know, stuff like that. It's like nature, very majestic, and it's cool. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's so cool to be able to say that you live so close to that, and, you know, just being able to be inspired by that, whether it's used in music videos or lyrical content, or just this idea of like being surrounded by great things around the world. I mean, there's inspiration everywhere, and it's great to be able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's very easy, especially in metal, to sort of like get snowed in on a certain sound or a certain band, but you need to like, it's such a niche genre, and, you know, everything is starting to sound the same pretty much, so you need to like find new places to draw inspiration from, whether it's, you know, nature or a 70s jazz record, whatever. You know, you need to find something that will spice up the genre.
Exactly. So, in speaking of that, after the album coming out, what is the plans for the band?
Yeah, well, we actually got an email today. Finally have some sort of like booking agency person guy. So I guess we'll start working on that tour that we've been dreaming about for years. Now, we're hoping to get on the road maybe in the autumn. Don't know where, don't know when, but, you know, sometime this year with some awesome band on a sweaty tour bus, playing a lot of shows, having the time of our lives. That is our ambition, and we're going to do our best to make it happen.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. I mean, the more that I listen to the songs here, I mean, it's going to be so interesting to see how it's going to be coming off live, but I just imagine that you guys are going to be able to do that so well. I mean, being able to write the songs and know what you want to incorporate. I mean, being able to transfer that into a live setting is going to be a cool experience.
Yeah, and it's actually like, I guess it's pretty common for, you know, metal bands to outdo themselves in the studio. They have perfectly quantized drums and super tight, chuggy guitar parts that they recorded like one note at the time, and then they get on stage and everything just sounds like shit. But you know, that's pretty much the norm in metal, so nobody cares anymore. It's more about, you know, supposed to be loud and people bumping into each other. But I guess we're sort of old school in that regard, because we've just been holed up in our rehearsal space for more than a year, practicing twice a week. Because, you know, we just don't want to be embarrassed when we go on stage. Like, we don't want to be the typical metal band. We want to, like, be able to play our stuff without backing tracks or stuff like that, you know. Just like I mentioned, Sebastian's looping pedal. It's like we'd rather write a song around him looping live on stage than, you know, use a backtrack. Not that it isn't okay with some bands. I mean, like, you can't bring if you're like Dimmu Borgir, you can't bring a symphonic orchestra on the road, and that's okay. But, you know, even, you know, the simplest thing can be put on a CD and played in the background just because it's more convenient for a band. But we don't want to be those guys, so we're actually pretty fucking tight. I'm not gonna lie.
And that makes me so happy to hear that too. I mean, for all the reasons that you listed. I mean, there are so many people who would rather like focus on backing tracks or having everything sampled on stage or whatever the case is. And the fact that you guys are going out of your way to make sure that everyone is playing live and making sure everything is represented to the best of your abilities from what you guys can do. I mean, that always, for me, makes for a better live show.
Yeah, for us too. I mean, like, it's a different approach, I guess. I mean, some, like, if you're a 15-year-old kid going to see a deathcore band, you just want to mosh and punch people in the face. You don't really care about the guitars because you can't hear anything anyway. But it's like, I'm more into the bands like Opus. They just stand straight up on stage. They don't move for 2 hours, and they play everything to perfection, and you're just amazed the entire time. Oh my god, they're such amazing musicians. And I want to be like one of those guys. I think we all do.
Yeah, and you know,
that doesn't say that we don't you know, go a little bit insane at times. There have been some incidents. I don't know if you've watched YouTube. But actually, in our latest, like, we made some sort of like teaser trailer video for the album and included some shots of a show we did in, it was actually not far from here. And we played 6 or 7 songs. They're pretty long, so that's a whole set for us. Anyway, towards the end, I think we had like 2 or 3 songs left. Our guitar player now, bass player then, Joan, split his eyebrow open on Sebastian's headstock, you know, on his guitar. And there was just blood everywhere. And it was like a carpet type thing on stage, and they, you know, sent us pictures the next day. You're gonna pay for this. And he had to go to the emergency room and like get stitches. But he finished the last 3 songs with just blood like gushing from his face. So, you know, as much as I say that we want to be like perfect musicians live, we also like to go crazy when it's called for.
And I'm glad to see that kind of dedication too, because lesser bands would have just immediately stopped playing and they would have canceled the rest of the show. But being able to finish out the set like that, it's great to see that kind of dedication.
Yeah, and like he couldn't go anywhere because we needed to take pictures and stuff, you know. If he would have just ran out of there, we would have missed the whole publicity thing, you know. We actually, he had I think he still, no, Sebastian bought that actually. He had a Dingwall bass. It's a sort of like a boutique brand from Canada. I think it is, yeah. And it was white. So, you know, there was no mistaking what those like red stains on it were. And we, you know, just took a picture of it and posted it on our Facebook, you know, like, thanks for tonight, whatever. And the guy who makes those basses, like Sheldon Dingwall, he commented on the photo with like a thumbs up or something, and we thought that was the coolest thing in the entire world. Like, yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Well, awesome. Well, again, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to me about everything that's going on in the world of Letters from the Colony. And, of course, talking about the debut album, Vignette, which is coming out February 16th, and you're going to blast. It was awesome to be able to get your insight into everything, being able to explore the album and everything that you guys going on in the future. I absolutely love the album from start to finish, and I can't wait to see where you guys go from here.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure talking to an American for a change.
Well, I'm glad to be of service. Before we wrap things up here, is there anything else you'd like to mention that I hadn't brought up yet?
Yeah, pretty much what I was just saying. It was like, you have this image in your head of what being a rock star is supposed to be like, you know? And, you know, I've been guilty of interviewing myself in the shower in my early teens. I know a lot of people are, and, you know, the guy interviewing you is never, like, Polish or something like that. Well, Alexander, how does it feel to be a platinum rock star? So, you know, doing this interview with an American feels like, you know, the real deal. So thank you.